Hajime no Ippo is a very special series to me. When I discovered the Rocky franchise about a year ago now, I immediately became obsessed with the world of boxing. It just seemed like the perfect sport where you completely put your all into it, and if it goes well, you end up looking and feeling like the strongest person in the world. Rocky was the perfect series for my introduction to boxing, but it also carried with it an unmatched feeling of inspiration and positivity that when I first saw it, I think it was actually that feeling rather than the boxing on display that got me enthralled with the sport. Like any good sport will do, it got me looking onto YouTube for real famous fights where I came across an amazing channel called The Modern Martial Artist. I quickly became familiar with the greats, Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, George Foreman, Floyd Mayweather, Roberto Duran, and after binging most of this guy's channel, I came across a video of his which demonstrated the real life techniques shown in a little show called Hajime no Ippo. At the time, I'm sitting there watching this grainy footage of some guy called Jack Dempsey perform a Dempsey roll, and the video then shows a side-by-side of some guy from this show performing the same move, except his move is infinitely cooler than this grainy footage because I can hear the deafening roar of jet engines charging up as he's doing it. And naturally, I think this is the coolest thing ever and decided to check it out, and that's how I discovered Hajime no Ippo. And now we've got the prologue out the way, we can truly get into the meat of probably my favourite sports show I've ever seen. I'm going to be spoiling basically all of the first 76 episodes of the original 2000 to 2002 anime, so you've been warned, but I will quickly give you the briefest of synopses. This guy is called Ippo Makunouchi, and you can immediately see why they just stick to Ippo, can't you? We get the typical introduction, bullied kid inspired by a very cool mentor. He gets introduced to the world of boxing, works his way up the ranks, yada 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 yada. But if it were just that formulaic, I wouldn't love this series as much as I do. Part of what makes this series so special is the progression Ippo undergoes. It's one of the best shows I've seen where the protagonist slowly builds up his skill set. By that I mean we spend a lot of time in Ippo's first fight where he can basically only just jab. Then he learns an uppercut, etc, etc. By starting him at literally ground zero, which is basically where I was at too when first watching, it lets us both learn along with him. But even better, because boxing is a real sport, the author, George Morikawa, got to implement real techniques. I briefly mentioned the Dempsey roll earlier, we'll get back to that, but Ippo learns his signature liver blow, as well as the fairly obscure gazelle punch which dates back to the 1956 boxer Floyd Patterson, and even Ippo's movement technique references a boxer, in this case Mike Tyson's iconic peekaboo style. This was especially cool to me because it showed me realistic progression and realistic techniques that I could and would go on to practice when I took up boxing myself. Before we get to the fights, another important aspect of Ippo is the Kamigawa gym, and more specifically, the vibe and uplifting atmosphere that it promotes. Throughout the series, we probably spend just as much time in the gym training as we do fighting, and therefore we become very well acquainted with its inhabitants, particularly Takamura, Aoki, and Kimura. These guys get their own fights in the show, and we get to see them train with, help Ippo, and grow closer as a group of self-improving friends. They push each other to do better and all go all out with their training, but manage to still do so in a fun way where they become really close. And this positive atmosphere that goes through the gym reaches even beyond that, and we see that in what I believe is quite an underrated character in the series called Umezawa. Earlier when I said Ippo got bullied, this was said bully. It's pretty awful to Ippo in the beginning for basically no reason at all, but once Ippo takes up boxing and he comes to one of Ippo's matches to scope him out, he gains a newfound respect for him. For a lot of characters, this is where their progression would end, acknowledging their wrongdoing and probably leaving the story. But Umezawa sticks around, and later on when Ippo's mum needs help running her fishing business, it's Umezawa who steps in to help out and keep not only the business going, but keeping Ippo boxing instead of having him to have to drop out and help his mum. And from here we see his support visually at fights with a banner or a drum for Ippo, in the locker room giving him good luck or presenting him with homemade boxing shorts. Whatever it is, Umezawa is there for Ippo, and he turns out to be a great friend and a character I really liked seeing change over the show. He proves that the uplifting and inspirational atmosphere the series carries not only affects the audience, but the audience in the show, and I think that's really special. But now that we can start talking about the fights, I think I'll kick it off with an absolute banger, Ippo versus Takeshi Sendo. Sendo is a character we are given a lot of background to. He fights for honor, his town, the kids who look up to him in his town. He's a really good person, but also a really strong boxer, so it's fairly unknown as to what the result of this fight will be. And once it hits the 5th round, it looks like Ippo's reached his limit and he's not going to be able to fight a 6th round, and this will be it. This is where a blessing appears for Ippo, with Sendo being knocked unconscious in the corner chair from the previous round. I'll admit, this felt a bit anticlimactic for what I thought was going to be one of the biggest fights in the series, but looking back now, I know how intentional that was. We'll get back to Sendo, but I think it's important we talk about Ippo versus Eiji, the featherweight champion of Japan. Throughout the series, we've seen Ippo fight like 11 professional matches, each of them more difficult than the last. He's learnt new techniques each time that help him come out on top, and his reversal KO style means we're always expecting a comeback win. So in this championship fight, where Ippo unloads everything he's learned, pulling out all the special moves at this point, like the liver blow, gazelle punch, everything in his arsenal, and a couple times it really looks like it's working. The fight looks evenly matched with neither fighter giving an inch. But in the end, it came down to the resolve of Eiji. He could not lose this fight. It was his last chance at making it globally in the world of boxing, and the 10 years of experience he had on Ippo proved to be the deciding factor. And it's very important that this loss happened. After all, it's the first one Ippo's faced so far, but I like his reaction to the loss more than the actual fact that it happened, because Ippo doesn't give an immediate reaction. He goes on for a bit, living his life, resting up after the fight. It's only upon a rewatch of the fight on video by himself that he truly breaks down and realizes the impact of this loss. And it's a good number of episodes before Ippo fights again, but this time is put to such good use, not only building back up Ippo's mental resolve, but his physical resolve, because this is where Ippo learns his signature technique, the Dempsey Roll. And when I first saw it in the Modern Martial Artist video, I thought Ippo would learn this in like episode 30 and it would be his go-to move throughout the entire series. But instead, it takes like 70 episodes for Ippo to learn, and I think that makes its payoff even better. Because here we are again, in the ring with Sendo, where Ippo will fight him for the second time. This is where we truly get to see a brawl. Whilst Ippo's been training, Sendo has become the featherweight champion of Japan, and this is the rematch for the title. This fight is just purely amazing. Again, we get to see the awesome techniques on display from Ippo, as mentioned earlier, but we see Sendo's smashes in full force as well. This fight has so many twists and turns, and being the second time he's fought Sendo, it's not at all guaranteed Ippo is going to win again. But in the end, after a 4-episode long fight, which honestly goes by in a flash, the final move brings together everything in this series. Ippo unleashes the first proper Dempsey roll of the show, absolutely tearing into Sendo in one of the coolest sequences I've ever seen. This payoff is perfect, there's no other real way to say it, and seeing him become featherweight champ after 75 episodes of journey is so rewarding and inspiring. Hopefully this has helped you understand my appreciation for boxing as well as Hajime no Ippo. It's not only the fights and the cool moves and references to real boxers, it's the feeling generated by seemingly everything the sport of boxing touches, as it's the same feeling I got from Rocky. This overwhelming optimism and hope that the underdog will always win, the feeling of positivity and warmth that the gym exhibits in the show, and the effect boxing has not only on us as the viewer, but the characters in the show too. Thank you so much for watching this brief intermission in your life, and until next time, have a good one.